The man in the faded Keanu Reeves walked into the luxury watch store with quiet steps and a soft look in his eyes. The lights above him were bright and cold, shining down on rows of glass cases filled with expensive timepieces. The other customers inside wore tailored suits and sleek dresses. Most had assistants or bodyguards nearby. Keanu, in contrast, wore an old gray jacket, faded jeans, sneakers that had seen better days. He didn't come for attention. He didn't come to show off. He came because of a promise. A promise he made to a man named Oscar. A promise made years ago, under very different lights, those of a hospital room, filled with the quiet sounds of beeping machines and slow breathing. The moment Keanu entered, a woman at the front desk gave him a quick glance, then returned to her tablet. A young employee behind the glass counter gave him a forced smile, but didn't move. They assumed he was lost. Another tourist, maybe someone looking for directions, but Keanu knew exactly where he was. He walked past the front displays and stopped at a simple case in the back. Inside was a thin, classic watch leather strap, silver face, no diamonds, just time and memory. "Can I help you?" a voice said from behind. It was the manager.
Ow.
Dressed in black and wearing a name tag that read Lawrence. His voice was firm, his tone sharp. He didn't offer a welcome-only judgment. Keanu turned slowly. "I'd like to see this one," he said, pointing to the watch. Lawrence looked him over, eyes stopping at the worn sneakers. Then he crossed his arms and smirked. "That's a limited edition model," Lawrence said. "It's not ... for everyone." Keanu raised an eyebrow gently. "What do you mean?" Lawrence chuckled softly, but there was no humor in it. I mean, it's $10,000. We don't show it to ... browsers. A silence followed. The kind that stretches a little too long. Keanu didn't speak right away. He simply looked. Back at the watch, in that silence something shifted. An older woman near the entrance paused. She stared at him, eyes widening. A younger man scrolling on his phone looked up, then blinked, then stared. People began to recognize him. Not from the clothes, not from any announcement, but from the calm in his face, the quiet strength that couldn't be hidden. Still, Lawrence hadn't noticed. He was too focused on the jacket, the shoes, the wrong signs. "Look," Lawrence said, annoyed now. "I'm sure there's a department store down the street. This isn't really your place." Keanu tilted his head slightly. "What place is that?" Lawrence smiled. "It's the kind of place where people don't ask to see watches they can't afford." A few gasps came from behind. Someone whispered his name. A couple moved aside, unsure if they were watching a scene or a memory being made. Keanu looked down at his hands. He had held the hands of dying friends, had carried strangers on film sets, had rebuilt motorcycles from scratch. Those same hands now curled lightly, not in anger, but in thought. "You know," he said softly, "I once promised someone I'd get this exact watch. It was the last thing he looked at before he passed away. I told him I'd come here one day, not for myself, but for him." Lawrence blinked, a little thrown off. Huh? Keanu continued. He said it reminded him of his father. His father wore one just like this. Simple, strong, not loud, not proud, just ... honest. He looked at the watch again. "But maybe I don't belong here," he added quietly. And then he turned. But before he could take a full step, the older woman stepped forward. She was shaking. Are you Keanu Reeves?" Lawrence spun around. Keanu nodded politely. "Yes, ma'am." The room changed instantly. Whispers turned into waves. Phones came out. A few tried to pretend they hadn't judged him moments ago. Lawrence's face turned pale. "Sir Mr. Reeves, I'm so sorry. I didn't realize, please. Allow me to." Keanu held up a hand. "You already said I don't belong here." Lawrence opened his mouth to explain, but the words wouldn't come. Keanu stepped toward the counter, pulled out a small folded envelope from his jacket, and placed it down. This was Oscar's letter. He left it for me. Inside is the amount. For that watch, he saved for years. Told me to buy it no matter what. He looked into Lawrence's eyes. I don't want a discount. I don't want special treatment. Just wanted to keep a promise. He pushed the envelope gently across the counter, ring it up. For a long moment, no one moved. Lawrence swallowed hard and opened the envelope. Inside was a cashier's check. $10,000. Exactly. Dated 6 months ago. His hands shook. Keanu turned back to the crowd, smiled kindly at the older woman, and waited. Eventually, Lawrence returned with the watch in a soft velvet box. Here. You go, he said, voice low. Keanu nodded. Thank you. Then he opened the box, looked at the watch, and placed it gently on his wrist. You were right about one thing, he said. Lawrence looked up, confused. This place wasn't for me. Keanu said, It was for Oscar. He nodded once, then walked out, and no one stopped him. The letter nobody saw outside. The street was loud again. Cars moved past. People laughed. The city had no idea what had just happened inside that watch store. But Keanu felt it like the air around him had shifted, heavier with memory. He walked. Slowly, the box tucked away in his jacket, the watch already resting on his wrist. Every few steps he glanced at it. Not to check the time, but to remember Oscar, to remember the hospital, the final words, the final breath. Oscar had been a quiet man, a janitor at a small movie studio. He swept floors and emptied trash, never complained, never asked for more. But he had something few people had, an old soul, full of kindness. Keanu met him during a night shoot years ago. Everyone had gone home. The lights were dim. Keanu was sitting alone, drinking coffee, trying to stay awake. Oscar came by with a mop and a tired smile. Long night? He asked. Yeah, Keanu replied. They didn't talk much at first, just small nods and small exchanges. But over the next few nights, something grew between them. Oscar never asked for a photo, never talked about movies. He just asked questions that mattered. Do you ever feel tired of being seen? What makes you happy, really? And once, in the quiet of a night break, he asked, if you had to keep just one promise in your life, what would it be? Keanu never forgot that question. And that's when he told Oscar, if someone ever trusts me enough to give me their final wish, I'll do everything to honor it. Oscar didn't reply. He just nodded slowly as if writing it down in his heart. Back in the present, Keanu found a bench in a quiet park, away from the noise. He sat down, pulled the letter from his jacket, and opened it again. The handwriting was shaky, but strong. It was written in blue ink. 3 pages folded neatly. Dear Keanu, if you're reading this, then I've probably already annoyed a few angels by asking too many questions. I'm not afraid to go. Shh. I just want you to know, talking to you, those nights changed something in me. You made me feel seen. Not because of fame, because you listened. That watch I showed you, the one like my dad's it, reminded me of a time when life made more sense. So here's my ask. If you find the strength by that watch, wear it not for me. For every quiet person who never had a voice. And when someone asks about it, don't just say it was a gift. Say it was a reminder that kindness still matters. Thank you. For being real, Oscar. Keanu folded the letter back and sat in silence. Across the park, a small boy chased pigeons while his mother watched with a soft smile. An old man fed birds from a paper bag. A young woman typed on her laptop under a tree. All strangers. All carrying invisible stories, just like Oscar, just like himself. Later that evening, Keanu got a call from his assistant, Ella. Keanu, she said quickly, you've gone viral. He blinked. What? Someone filmed what happened at the watch store. The whole internet's talking about it. Keanu sighed gently. Of course they are. They're calling it the quiet clapback. There are memes, articles. Even the store's online reviews have exploded. People are sharing stories of how they've been judged based on clothes, looks, you name it. Keanu rubbed his forehead. I didn't mean to make a scene. You didn't, but the way you handled it, people felt it. There was a pause. Also, Ella added, the store manager Lawrence posted a public apology video. Keanu raised an eyebrow. Really? He said, meeting you changed his life. Keanu leaned back on the bench. He didn't smile. Not yet. He just looked at the watch again, then whispered, "It's not about me." Later that night, he opened his laptop and began typing something into a blank document. Not a script, not a journal. A letter. "Dear Oscar, today I wore the watch. Fits like it was always meant to be there. Someone insulted me and I stayed calm. Not because I'm strong. It's because I heard your voice in my head. I kept the promise. But it's not over. You." Said when someone asks about the watch to tell them it's a reminder. So I'm thinking, maybe it's time more people got reminders like this. You were a janitor, but you cleaned more than floors. You cleaned hearts. You reminded people to slow down, to listen, to ask real questions. Maybe the world needs more of that, so I'm going. To do something, I'll start with one place, then another. We'll call it the Oscar Project. Quiet kindness, no cameras. Just action. I hope you're watching, your friend, Keanu. He hit save, closed the laptop, stared at the city lights. He didn't know how, or when, or who would help. But he knew why. Because when someone like Oscar trusts you with their last wish, you don't just wear it, you live it. The Oscar Project begins to a week's past, as the video of the watch store incident had already faded from the trending pages. Most viral moments do. But what didn't fade was the letter Keanu wrote. What didn't fade was the silence that lingered. Afterward, the kind that moves inside people, long after the noise is gone. Keanu didn't announce anything publicly. He didn't post any speeches, no press releases, no hashtags. He just started. He chose a place downtown. It used to be a library, then a pawn shop, then nothing. The windows were boarded up. The roof leaked. The floors were cracked. Most people walked by it without even looking. But Keanu saw something else. He stood in front of it one morning, the wind tugging at his coat. Beside him was Ella, holding a rolled-up blueprint and 2 coffee cups. "You sure about this?" she asked. "Not even a little," he said, smiling faintly. "But it feels right." They called it the Oscar Project, not officially, just between them. There was no sign, no logo. It was a space where people who had been overlooked could come in and feel seen. First, they fixed the roof, then the walls. Local carpenters came, curious at first, then eager to help. Electricians showed up after their shifts. Artists painted quiet murals on the inside hands, reaching out, eyes filled with kindness, a clock with no numbers. Keanu paid for everything anonymously. He asked everyone to keep his name out of it. No interviews, no posts. If someone asked, he told them, "I'm just a volunteer." And still word spread, because kindness spreads. On a quiet Friday afternoon, the first event began. It wasn't a show. It wasn't a launch. It was a circle of chairs. 20 people. No cameras. People came in. Nurses, janitors, teachers, a woman who worked night shift at the bus depot. They sat together. One by one told a story. Not the kind of story that trends online, the kind that hurts in silence. A man spoke of losing his job after being judged for his accent. A woman spoke of being called invisible by her own family, a teenager. Barely able to speak, said, "I don't know if I matter." No one clapped, no one filmed. But when it was over, Keanu stood up. "You do?" he said softly. "You matter. I don't know each of your names, but I know how it feels to be unseen. To walk into a place and be treated like you don't belong." He took off his jacket slowly and rolled up his sleeve. The watch was there. Someone once made me feel that way too. Someone else reminded me not to carry it alone. He pointed to the watch. "This isn't expensive because of the price. It's expensive because it costs someone everything to believe in it, and in me." After the meeting, a man in his 60s came up to Keanu. He was quiet, held something in his hand. "This belonged to my son," the man said. He passed 3 years ago. He always wanted to be a writer, carried this notebook everywhere. He held it out. Keanu looked down. It was old and torn, but filled with words, dreams, beginnings. "I want you to have it." The man said. Keanu took the notebook with both hands. "Thank you, I'll read every word." He did. That night he stayed up until morning, reading poems about hope, short stories about children who became stars, drawings of hands reaching for light. He marked one line in particular. Some of us weren't meant to shine bright, but to remind others how to. He underlined it twice. Days turned to weeks. More people came, not for help, not for advice, just for space. Space to breathe. Space to be human. A woman brought food one day, leftovers from her restaurant. She said nothing, just smiled and left. A young boy donated his sketchbook. For anyone who needs to draw it out, he said. Someone left a photo of a janitor on the shelf. Underneath in faded ink were the words, "Remember the quiet ones." One afternoon, as Keanu was sweeping the front steps, a black car pulled up. A well-dressed man stepped out. He looked around, confused. "Is this the place?" he asked. Keanu nodded. "The place where people cry and don't get judged." Keanu smiled gently. "It's one of the things we offer." The man hesitated, then said, "I don't know how to talk about my son. He hasn't spoken to me in 2 years." Keanu gestured toward the open door. "Start with that." The man walked in, his steps heavy. That evening, Ella sat beside Keanu on the front steps. She sipped coffee, then said, "You know, this won't stay secret forever." "I know. And when it breaks, the media will turn it into something else." Keanu looked up at the stars. "Let them." "Why?" He paused. "Because people like Oscar don't trend. But if even one person remembers him before they remember me, then we did it right." Ella leaned her head on his shoulder. They sat in silence, a silence full of meaning. The next morning, Keanu found something taped to the door. A drawing. It was of a man in a janitor's uniform standing in a room full of light, holding a mop like a sword. Above him were words written in pencil. "Heroes don't always wear capes. Sometimes they wear keys." He didn't know who left it, but he smiled, because he did know who it was for. The echo reaches furtherth morning began like most others at the Oscar Project, soft light filtering through dusty windows. Chairs set in quiet circles and a slow hum of voices just starting to rise. But something was different today. Keanu felt it the moment he walked in. Something in the air. It's not tension, but weight. Like a storm was waiting, not outside, but inside. Someone Ella was already there, sorting through envelopes. A stack of letters had come in. Handwritten, folded neatly. "No return addresses. More of these," she said, holding them up. "People are sending their stories now. Most of them never say your name. They say to the man with the watch." Keanu nodded. "Good." He took one, opened it slowly. The handwriting was small. "Shaky, dear stranger, I saw your story online." The one with the manager. "I work in a hotel. I'm told to smile but not speak. To serve but never be seen. Last week, a guest called me nothing. I went home and cried in the laundry room so my kids wouldn't hear. But after I watched your moment of silence, I didn't feel alone anymore. I just wanted to say thank you." Keanu folded it gently and placed it in the growing box of letters. "Let's read a few out loud today." At noon, the circle began. It was bigger now, more than 40 people. Some came from miles away. Others came from down the street. A few came without knowing why, until they sat down and heard the first voice. A teacher spoke of being ignored by parents who thought they knew better. A barista shared how a customer snapped at her for being too slow, while she was holding back tears over losing her brother. And then a new voice. Clear, but trembling. "My name is Maya," she said. Everyone turned. She was small, mid-30s, with deep eyes and hands that wouldn't stay still. "I used to be a singer. Not famous, just local shows, birthday parties. I stopped singing 2 years ago." Someone asked softly, "Why?" "Because the man I loved told me my voice was annoying." A long pause. Maya looked down. Said people only clapped to be polite. Ella started to speak, but Keanu raised a gentle hand. He stood, walked to the old upright piano in the corner, and opened it. The keys were dusty, slightly out of tune. He didn't say a word. He just began to play, a quiet melody, broken but beautiful. Soft, like a memory trying not to disappear. He looked at Maya. Double quotes, "try." He said, She hesitated. Everyone waited. Then Maya stood. Her voice came shaky at first, like a match trying to light, then stronger, clearer. She sang 4 lines, just 4, but they filled the room like sunrise. When she stopped, silence followed. No one clapped. Not because they didn't want to, but because clapping would have broken something sacred. A tear ran down her cheek. "Thank you," she whispered. "I needed to remember what it felt like." Keanu nodded. We all did. That evening, something unexpected happened. A news van parked across the street. A reporter stepped out holding a microphone. Walked over, waved politely. "Mr. Reeves," she said, "we heard about the Oscar project. Do you mind answering a few questions?" Keanu looked at the building behind him, the people still inside, the warm glow in the windows. "I do," he said. Gently, the reporter blinked. "You're declining?" "This isn't a story," he replied. "It's a sanctuary. Some things aren't meant to be broadcast." She hesitated. "But people want to know." "Let them feel it instead," he said. "Not through a screen. Through action." He turned and walked back inside. Later that week, a package arrived. No name, just a small wooden box. Inside was a worn pair of black work shoes. A note attached read, "My father wore these for 30 years as a night guard. He never missed a shift, never got a thank you. You made me remember him. Now maybe someone else will too." Keanu held the shoes for a long time, then placed them by the front door beside the janitor's photo. Beside the notebook, beside the watch sketches, a child had drawn. The wall of remembrance was growing, not loud, not flashy, just real, a few. Days later, Keanu found a young man outside, sitting on the steps, hoodie pulled over his head. Arms wrapped around his knees, Keanu sat beside him. Didn't ask anything. After a while, the young man spoke. "They told me I'm a failure," he said, "that no one wants a dropout." "Are they right?" Keanu asked. The young man looked at him. "I don't know, but I can't stop hearing it in my head." Keanu reached into his pocket and pulled out the same folded letter from Oscar. He handed it over. "Read that," he said out loud. The young man read the final line, voice cracking. "Kindness still matters." Keanu nodded. "Especially to yourself." The boy didn't cry. He just breathed a little deeper, like someone had loosened the weight around his chest. That night, Ella looked at Keanu and said, "You keep giving them everything. How are you holding up?" Keanu smiled faintly. "I'm not here to be strong. I'm just here to remember." "Remember?" "What?" He looked at the wall of shoes, letters, drawings, and small gifts that we all matter, even when the world forgets. And somewhere across town, in a hotel laundry room, a tired mother placed her hand on her heart and whispered, "Kindness still matters." And for the first time in months, she believed it. The man who never spoke a rain fell hard the next morning, painting the city in soft gray. Puddles formed on cracked sidewalks. Umbrellas passed like quiet ships in a storm. Inside the Oscar project, the lights flickered once before settling into their usual warm glow. Keanu stood by the front window, holding a cup of tea. He watched the raindrops slide down the glass, its reflection faint, just a shadow behind water. "Big group today," Ella said behind him. "Chairs won't be enough." He nodded. "We'll sit on the floor if we have to." She hesitated, then added, "Someone new came early, just sitting in the back. Hasn't said a word." Keanu glanced over. In the far corner, near the bookshelf, sat a man in his 50s, soaked hoodie, calloused hands, eyes that looked past everything, like he had already lost the fight. Keanu didn't approach. Not yet. Sometimes people just needed space to feel invisible without being erased. By noon, every seat was taken. A few sat on the floor, others leaned against the walls. The room smelled like coffee and rain. A soft murmur moved through the crowd, old friends checking in. New faces searching for belonging. The session began. Stories poured out like the storm outside. A mother who worked 3 jobs and still couldn't afford school books. A refugee who had been told to go back where he came from at his workplace. A teenager who said he hadn't heard "I'm proud of you" in over 6 years. Keanu listened, never interrupting. When someone cried, he let the silence hold them. When someone laughed through pain, he let it echo. And then, unexpectedly, The man in the hoodie stood up. The room fell silent. He didn't walk to the center. He didn't speak. He just pulled something from his paquita, small, folded photo and placed it on the WINDOWSILL dot. Then he sat back down. Nothing more, but everyone felt it. The weight of it. The ache after the session, when most people had left. Keanu walked to the window. He picked up the photo carefully. It was old. Cracked edges. A younger version of the man stood beside a little girl, maybe 5 years old. They were both smiling, their hands covered in paint. On the back were 4 words written in faded ink. I hope she remembers. The next day, Keanu came early. The man in the hoodie was already there, sweeping leaves from the front steps. He didn't look up when Keanu approached. Keanu grabbed another broom, worked beside him in silence. After a while, the man spoke. Her name's Emily, he said. She's 20 now. Haven't seen her since she was 6. Keanu paused. My wife passed, the man continued. I lost everything, job, house, myself. My wife's parents took Emily, said I wasn't stable. He stopped sweeping. They were right. Keanu leaned on his broom. Maybe. But you're standing here now. The man looked at him. I've tried to write letters. They never reply. Keanu didn't offer advice. He just said, then write one more. They sat at a small desk near the back. Keanu gave him paper, a pen, and space. The man wrote for an hour. He didn't cry. He didn't stop. When he was done, he folded the letter, held it to his chest, and whispered, I hope this one finds her. That night, Keanu made a phone call, quiet one, to a friend and family outreach. I'm not asking to break rules, he said. I'm just asking if there's a safe way. A middle place. A bridge. The friend agreed to try. A week passed, then 2. The man kept coming, never spoke during sessions, but helped with repairs, refilled coffee. Listened deeply. On the 15th day, Ella ran in holding her phone. She responded. She whispered. Emily. Keanu looked up. She said, she remembers him, the photo, the painting day. She wants to meet, but not in public. Not yet. Keanu nodded slowly. Tell her to come here. The next evening, the lights inside were dim. Chairs had been cleared. A small table stood in the center, 2 chairs and nothing else. The man sat down. His hands trembled. Keanu waited near the door. Then she walked in. Emily groaned, yes, but the same eyes. She looked at him. He stood. She didn't cry. She didn't speak. She just walked forward and placed her head against his chest. His arms wrapped around her gently. Like he didn't believe he deserved it, but hoped maybe he did. Keanu stepped outside. He watched the rain fall again. This time softer. Ella joined him. You think they'll be okay? Keanu nodded. They already are. 2 days. Later, the man brought in a wooden box. Inside were his old brushes, art books, and a folded apron. I used to paint, he said. Forgot what colors felt like. He opened one of the books and showed Keanu a sketch. It was a mop. Next to it, a crown beneath the words, he cleaned hearts. Keanu smiled. Let's hang that on the wall, he said outside. New people were waiting. A woman holding a violin case, a boy with a stutter, an old man with no words, just a flower. In hand, Keanu opened the door wider. Come in, he said. We're all just remembering how to be seen. The day the silence broke, the sky was clear for the first time in weeks. Clouds, just soft blue, stretched wide over the city like an open promise. Birds returned to the power lines. The breeze carried a quiet calm, like something important was about to begin or end. Keanu Reeves stood in front of the Oscar project just after sunrise. He held a single flower. White, simple, fresh. Today marked 1 year since the promise was kept. 1 year since the day he walked into that watch store wearing worn sneakers and left wearing something much heavier. A vow. Inside the building, the walls had changed. Not with paint, but with life. Drawings, letters, photos, old tools, scarves, aprons, shoes, all hung with care. People called it the Wall of the Quiet. Each piece told a story of someone who had been dismissed, overlooked, judged, or simply forgotten, but not anymore. Ella was already inside, arranging chairs. She moved slowly, thoughtfully, like every placement mattered. Because it did. Today wasn't just another gathering. It was a celebration of silence. The kind that heals. The kind that listens. The kind that holds people together without needing. Applause. At noon, the room filled. More than 80 people came. Some had been here since the beginning. Others had driven hours. Few walked in with shaking hands, unsure if they belonged. They all did. Maya, the singer, stood near the piano. Emily and her father sat together in the front row, her hand resting lightly on his. The teacher, the barista, the boy with the stutter, the refugee, all of them were there. A new woman entered near the end. Holding nothing but a backpack and a folded note, Keanu stood beside the window, watching them all. His heart was full. But he didn't speak yet. Ella stepped forward. She held a small piece of paper. "We wanted to start today with a letter," she said. "One of the first we received from someone none of us ever met in person." She unfolded the paper. "Dear stranger, if you've ever been told you're too quiet, too weird, too different, please don't change. Your stillness might be the reason someone else finds peace. Your gentleness might be the only thing that stops someone from giving up. The world needs more of you, even if it doesn't say it out loud, especially then. Love, a silent friend." After she finished, no one clapped. He didn't need to. Instead, Keanu walked to the center. He took a deep breath, and for the first time, he told the full story. Not about the watch, about Oscar. He spoke of their late-night talks, the cleaning cart, the coffee breaks, the laugh Oscar made when he told a bad joke, the silence they shared when words weren't enough. He told them about the hospital, about the last promise, and about the line in the letter that stayed with him every day. "Say it's a reminder." Keanu pointed to the watch on his wrist. "This," he said softly, "isn't just a promise kept, it's a question." He looked around the room. "What are we reminding each other of?" Someone near the back whispered, "That we matter." Keanu smiled. "Yes, that we matter." A woman stood up. She was shaking slightly. "Can I sing?" she asked. Maya nodded to her. "You don't have to ask." And the woman began. It was off-key. It was raw. It was beautiful. Others followed. Someone read a poem. A boy played guitar with trembling hands. A retired teacher recited a quote from a book he loved as a child. They weren't performers. They were people. Being seen as the sun began to set, Keanu walked outside with a small wooden box. He opened it and pulled out an old key, the kind janitors used to carry. Heavy metal, shaped like time. He knelt down by the base of the tree outside and dug a small hole inside. Placed the key, not to hide it, to plant it beside it. Placed a tiny sign that read, "For the ones who opened every door for others." The new woman, the one with the backpack, walked over. "I used to work in a museum," she said. "I cataloged ancient things no one cared about. Till one day, I stopped believing my own story mattered." She looked at him. "But this place, ... it reminded me." She pulled something from her bag, a folded paper crane, my mother used to say. "Leave something behind that can still fly." She placed the crane on the windowsill and walked away. Keanu watched it flutter slightly in the wind. Ella stepped beside him. "You think this will last?" she asked quietly. He looked at the crane. "The tree? The watch? The people laughing inside?" "No," he said. "But the feeling will." "What feeling?" He smiled, being seen. That night, as the last people left and the doors locked, Keanu sat alone on the steps. The stars blinked above, soft and unbothered. He looked at the watch. He didn't check the time. He just listened to the quiet. The same quiet Oscar once filled with questions, with warmth, with truth. And then he whispered, "Into the night, I kept the promise." A breeze passed, and it felt like someone said, "I know."